meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would ask for a motion, please, to approve the agenda. Izetta and John, discussion, all in favor? Motion is carried. Before we move on to the presentations, I would like to thank Mr. Matthews for a wonderful tour of the 7th and 8th grade area in this building that they are temporarily assigned to. It was wonderful seeing some of the classrooms and some of the great things that are going on. It was good to see how well students and staff have accommodated this disruption to the building they're used to being in. So thank you on behalf of the board. At this time, we will have a presentation by Megan Pilati on ELA and math results 3 through 8.
All right, so I'm going to be presenting tonight along with Mrs. Petricola and Mr. Matthews. So just a little background on the format. We had a bit of a different format this past year. We did computer-based testing for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students, and we still use the paper-based testing for 6th, 7th, and 8th. And our plan is to roll that up and include more grades this year for the computer-based testing. The state hasn't given a deadline yet for when everyone has to do computer-based testing, but they're going in that direction, so we're trying to prepare our students for that. So here are our participation rates. This is something that the state looks at and goes into our calculations for ESSA, which I talked to you about last year. And you can see that overall, we have some pretty good participation rates in our district. So I'm going to orient you to what you're looking at, and then I'll have Mr. Matthews and Mrs. Petricola talk specifically about the scores. But what you will see is that if you're looking at, for instance, the grade 3, this slide is for ELA, and it's comparing 2018 to 2019 years. And if you go down, you'll see all students and then all students for each year. So that's grade 3 students in 2018 and grade 3 students in 2019. If you look diagonal, you can see the students and how they progressed from one year to the next, because the kids who were in grade 3 in 2018 moved to grade 4 in 2019. And so there's a red arrow for our proficiency scores going down and a green arrow for them increasing by cohort.
Not much out there to be excited about for 3rd and 4th grade. Unfortunately, I think it's constantly a work in progress, looking at what that test reveals to us as far as what the state is hoping. We're experiencing shifts again in the standards, so it's our best efforts to, take care of each child's needs and make sure that we're not missing students and making sure that we're meeting all of their needs as far as ELA. We instituted new programs this past year at grades K through 2, and we're hoping to see those kind of feather out in the scores you see there, because the program that we were doing was just not working for us. So we're hoping that that will help us move forward. We're also using those interim reports to help us better identify student gaps before they reach the state assessment. So we reoriented the days that we're giving those, and also the time teachers are taking to create action plans working before the state test on what children need.
So there's a real sense of urgency at the middle school level for our students being successful on these achievement measures. We had some traction a couple years ago with our intervention systems, and I think we lost some of that footing through failure to plan effectively to keep those intervention systems going through the capital project years, the transition years. The idea that 8% of any subgroup would be considered an improvement means that we still have a long ways to go. I think that we took some of our system-wide call them failures because we can see that we missed some students along the way, especially at 5th grade. This continues to haunt our achievement results. When students come into 5th grade, we see a dip. It's something that's shown up for the last several years. So we have a lot of systems work to do. Our goal is to miss 0 students. We did not accomplish that goal. We have some brighter spots that we're looking to expand upon, particularly at the 6th grade level, 5th going into 6th. But even from my standpoint, the 35% economically disadvantaged students at grade 6 could be much better than that if we use our resources properly and respond to students' needs as they arise. I don't think I have any other comments on.
This next slide is oriented in the same way, but this represents the math scores and the levels of proficiency for the grades by grade level and then again by cohort.
One of the pieces that we learned last year as we transitioned to computer-based testing, I'll draw your eye to students with disabilities. That 8% is 1 or 2 children, and they specifically struggled with that transition to computer-based testing more profoundly than a typical child tended to show us. Their level of stress was higher, their willingness to persevere was lower. So we made some changes in our IEP planning to make sure that students had access to paper-based tests moving forward. So that's just one small step we're trying to take. But I think that it's difficult also to know what that stress looks like in the moment. So you know, in the media, there was a lot of stress about tests not loading properly, for example, at 4th grade, or not uploading to the state properly. I think that is incredibly stressful on the adults in the room. I'm not necessarily sure that the students were as aware of it as we all were, but that does have an impact. So it's not an excuse, but I think one thing to be proud of is the computer tools to do mathematical equations and to show your work are significantly different than we all did on a paper-based test. And yet the numbers, they do drop, but not necessarily precipitously so. So there's some opportunity there for improvement, and for us to look at how we teach those math tools specifically and how we write on computer platforms moving forward this year. And so we're working hard at that, at those types of strategies right now.
I do think that for math and ELA, at the 5th grade level, that was the only grade level we did computer-based testing. I do think it was very revealing, our preparation, preparing the students for responding in that environment online. I think that it's kind of a unique platform, and the kids weren't used to it. So we were teaching them in a way that was different than how they were being tested. So we've made some steps to correct that and give the students some extra practice with computer-based testing. The plan is to go to 5th and 6th this coming year. We've definitely learned some things. Again, at 6th grade, we have some strong points, but across the board, you can see that we had some system-wide issues, and we missed some students along the way. Making the excuses for that, I think, we have the resources and tools to get it done, and we have to figure out how to get it done so we don't miss any student.
So this next slide is a lot to take in, but it does show you our BOCES rankings over the past 3 years. So it'll show you, ELA and math. And again, the red arrows for when we've decreased in place, green arrows for when we've increased in our place in the BOCES. This is out of 25 districts. So you can take a minute to take that all in. Looking at the BOCES rankings is good information for us because although we're looking at, on the previous slides, the percent proficient in mastery students, this really shows us how our students did compared to students in other districts around us and where we fall within the BOCES with how our students performed. And then this is our grade 4 and 8 science over the past 2 years. So what are we doing to improve? As Mr. Matthews and Mrs. Petricola talked about the platform of the test, we're really working to plan to integrate more practice of that platform into instruction now that we have the one-to-one devices, trying to replicate that testing scenario with an instruction, so it's not something new that they're just doing during testing time. We also have started using Ames Web Plus this year, and that allows us to target specific skills that are holding students back from making progress. And that is something that's just started, but we've already seen that it's made a difference in helping us to design the interventions that students need based on their skill and their skill needs. We have made some staffing adjustments in order to move different staff members to areas that we think will benefit kids the most. We are focusing on data-driven instruction, as we have been in the past few years, but really focusing on that through personalized learning at Tier 1. So that data-driven instruction for all students, not just students who show us that they're struggling. And then we realigned our lesson planning requirement to make sure that there's data-driven instruction in everyday teaching and part of our Tier 1 instruction. Any questions that you may have?
Do you think that the Chromebooks, having the Chromebooks this year is going to have an impact?
I hope so. I don't think just having the Chromebooks will make an impact. I think it's really going to be us figuring out how to replicate that testing platform so they're having more practice with it throughout the year rather than, just a little bit before the test and on the testing days. So that's one thing I've asked BOCES for some help with. Mr. Matthews had actually come up with the idea of really getting teachers together with support from BOCES to figure out how we can make our lessons look more like that testing scenario when they're doing their practice. To get them more comfortable with that, because it's pretty complex, the tools that you have to use, especially for the math pieces. It's not really something that you just press buttons on the keyboard. It's really having to manipulate tools within the system.
I have a question on the Ames Web
Yes.
Plus. Okay. How is it tested? I saw that in the reports, but the schematic is very hard to interpret if you hadn't looked at it before.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So it's a series of tests that we are using for each child. They vary by the trimester, and they also vary by grade level. So for example, our kindergartners took 3 one-minute tests at the outset of kindergarten in math and in ELA. So they're showing us basic foundational skills. Which letters do they know, capital, lowercase, which sounds do they know, and can they break apart words into different sound chunks. So we know those are the foundational skills of reading. In the past, we were looking at more summative data. We were looking at who's already failing that first unit test in math and who is not able to keep up, rather than who is ready with those prerequisite skills. So we're using that data plus our previous systems and teacher recommendations to now triangulate what we need to look at for a child. So that comes into play who's pushing into support a classroom, who's pulling out and getting kids in a more one-to-one or two-to-one scenario, how the special ed students are being helped within their classrooms by their gen ed and special ed teacher. And it's really helping us looking at cohort overall. So for example, we found some significant gaps in our math expressions work in 3rd and 4th grade that showed up on our state tests, and the teachers felt that they were tackling it, but as we looked at the Ames Web data right from the beginning of the year, there really isn't a true understanding of fractions. So without a true understanding of fractions, we would be sending them on to 5th grade with a huge gap. So this is helping us to look K-8 at the specific skill needs and then to address those in real time. It also gives us an ability to progress monitor, which is something we were really sorely lacking, which means once a week, those same target kindergartners are going to get that 1-minute test again to see, are they making growth in the scenario that we put them in, or do we need to change that intervention or see them in a smaller ratio? So it allows us to be a little more scientific, but to also act more quickly.
Is it also linked to the standards?
It is.
It sounds like it,
standards-based.
definitely.
Right.
It sounds like it's also very basic education.
Yeah, the curriculum-based measures. This is familiar, but it kind of gone by the wayside as we took on the new pieces of the Common Core and everybody dove into rigor. But you can't just put rigorous text in a classroom and expect kids to understand and be able to move forward. I think we let go of some of the foundational skill preparation, and our kids are not ready when they come to school with those things already in place. We don't have that luxury. So it's really critical that we're filling all the gaps for all the kids, like Mr. Matthews said, and not just presuming that we're going to handle it after a test.
Will there be a correlation between the child's Ames Web Plus score in June next year versus the state testing?
It's hard to predict that. It's not going to give us the same piece that we saw in STAR as prediction of failure or success, but what it is going to do for us is place those students against a band of nationally normed pieces, but it's going to nationally norm them by each sub-skill. So we're seeing kindergartners, for example, who have really pretty great on-task vocabulary, but can't do letter naming. So now we can stop just trying to put them in every single piece and instead focus in on letter naming for a little while. And so that goes through the gamut of K-8 skills. So we're going to know if a student is on track to be average national. They should have success on the New York State test because that is actually less rigorous than the national norm would basically say. So we should be able to tell the percentile students that will hit that proficiency, but of course it's not going to be 100% slam dunk because there's always the human cogs that change everything. Does that help? So we tried to put snippets into that report, but I was trying to respect privacy and not overwhelm with all the details. But I think as we move through this year, we'll have better data to show you as we go as far as how we're progressing, and it breaks down the students into different tiers, so we should have some really interesting pieces. We're getting trained on Friday on how to manipulate the reports.
Thank you.
Okay? There's a box, sorry.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, Megan. Thank you, Melissa and Mark. At this time, it's public access to the board. Is anyone signed up? No? All right, we'll move on to reports and correspondence, starting with Melissa, where you've already given us so much.
Yeah, I don't have to talk at all.
But
So you had my report, and I wanted to obviously answer any questions that might exist, but I also thought perhaps I could use this time to introduce our new assistant principal, who's had such a great impact on our students already. I thought Mrs. Graves could just share a bit about herself to the board.
Hi, thank you very much. It's so great to be here. Just wanted to give you a little background in case you didn't know. I come to North Rose with 16 years of experience from Williamson Central School District. I started out in first grade, spent 9 years there, and then I went to third grade, spent 2 years there. For the last 4 years, I've been a literacy specialist, K-4, and then for the last year before I came here, I was an instructional coach where I really was able to impact the whole building through a new implementation of a new reading program and really support teachers in what they needed to further their students. I also come to you with experience in the MTSS process. I was a facilitator for many years, as well as an ELA coordinator. I'm a mom of 3 girls, so I have a freshman in college, I have a 8th grade middle school girl, and my youngest daughter is a kindergartner. So I also have many years of experience as a parent and have seen lots of different changes throughout education during that time. But all of these things have really led me to be here and to help further this district, and I'm very happy to be here.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful to have you here. You have a rich background, and we welcome you and
Thank
wish
you.
you well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mark, I want to say a little bit more.
Part of our, you've seen over the last couple of reports, significant overrepresentation of our economically disadvantaged subgroup and our students with disabilities subgroup. We also see some overrepresentation in office discipline and our suspensions, time missed from class due to behavior. So we have moved forward with guidelines. So the thinking here briefly is if there are routines and procedures in the class, they're maintained and updated and retaught as needed. Within that environment, positive relationships between and among the students and between the teacher and the students can exist. The routines and procedures are an environmental control. Under that umbrella, the interactions between the teacher and the student can be more helpful in developing relationships and setting goals, as opposed to telling students what to do all the time, and they can oppose that or what have you. So we want to give students more choice in the classroom, following procedures and routines so that we can promote relationships. So we guide them, in my report I included some guidelines for how to build relationships with students, and also I included the procedures and routines that are required in each classroom at the middle school. Did anybody have any questions for me?
I just have one thing to say, and you touched on it just now. The 2 things that I had highlighted in your packet were effective relationships and data from Ames Web. I think the harness that you're put together is going to create a positive learning environment for the students who will respect the staff, and likewise, staff respect the students. It's going to make your job easier.
Thanks. I really wanted the teachers to be the facilitators of learning. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I know I included a graph. I know I've historically probably provided too much in these graphs. I really was just trying to focus on low reading fluency, and so maybe as time goes by, I'll be able to be more concise with some of those reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Linda, you had
Well,
something?
I just want to make the comment, it seems as if you have taken your experiences from last year so that you could be proactive in the beginning to help the students. And I guess the thing that struck me too is that the way this is set up too gives students more personal responsibility for what they're doing, which is really good for the real world.
Thanks. Everybody has rules to live by.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
High school?
Good evening, everybody. The item in my report that I wanted to reference was the proposed honor system that would replace our class rank system. This is a proposal that came from our enrichment SIP group of teachers, and we're putting it forward tonight because it aligns with multiple goals of the strategic plan, including students taking more mastery courses and students achieving at higher levels, and it also aligns well with the new ESSA accountability system through the state. So I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to ask me anything related to that tonight.
Basically, you're giving points for taking extracurricular and being a good citizen of the high school. And by that I mean you're in sports, you're in clubs, you're also doing well in curriculum. How will that influence the valedictorian and salutatorian ranks?
So this would replace, the proposal is for this to replace the class rank system. So this would require policy action because we do have a policy related to valedictorians, salutatorians. So the proposal is that this would replace that. So we would have a valedictorian and a salutatorian. We would recognize a group of students who met each level of this honors program. Again, that's just the proposal.
And how has that evolved? I mean, did it come from the students, from the faculty, from parents, or what have you?
Well, what we did was we have multiple, what we call SIP groups. Those are school improvement plan groups, which are groups that are tasked, groups of teachers and staff that are tasked with goals from the school improvement plan. And those goals come from the strategic plan. So when we started looking at the strategic plan and saying, how are we going to get kids to take more advanced courses? How are we going to get kids to want to achieve mastery level? That's how this idea came forward. Well, if we were able to recognize multiple students, a whole group of students, for doing all of these things that also align with the new state accountability system, maybe that would be a nice way to encourage them to do that, or an effective way to encourage them to do that. So we've also talked about ways to incentivize it, both at graduation and after graduation. So we've gotten input from teachers and staff. We've gotten some input. That group has also gotten a little bit of input from parents and students. And they've submitted it to me, and I've worked with them to come up with this proposal.
I just want to say that my grandson graduated from a high school using the honors program. And there were a lot of kids with the same grade point average, well above 100, because they were taking the AP courses. And it worked just fine. And they had it worked out of who was going to speak at graduation. It just wasn't the top two or the top grade point average. There were other ways that they determined who would speak, and it was a wonderful thing. I really liked it. I'm all for it.
How do colleges look at it?
Well, it really wouldn't change the grade point calculation. It would be sort of like a recognition, sort of like the state recognizes different levels, advanced regions with honors. It would be sort of our local way to designate level of achievement upon graduation. So it would be something that students could put on a resume, or they could certainly talk to colleges about, but it wouldn't really affect anything, as proposed, it would not affect anything grade-wise or change our grading system at all. It would really just change the way we recognize students.
How, and I don't know how quite to put this, but how would this affect a student who is not taking AP or SUPA or whatever courses?
So I appreciate that question, because that's something that came up a lot. And what we worked to do is include multiple options in the proposal that would give basically all students access. For example, our students who are alternately assessed through special education and do not receive a high school diploma, there's an option for them based on some of the assessments that they take to achieve at every level of the program. Students who attend BOCES, there are options. So if you attend BOCES, you're not here for half the day your junior and senior year, there's less opportunity to take a lot of the advanced level courses, including AP courses and FLCC courses. So there's options for them through the designations that they get through their BOCES programs. If they attain that rank and that level, they can access all levels of the system at all. So we really work to give everybody access based on whatever pathway they are on for completion or graduation.
So would a student in that track, if you will, that be able to address the audience during graduation night? A person who's not in the advanced courses?
Sure, so that would be, so the student who speaks, or students who speak at graduation, would be something that we could talk about. I would like to give, personally, I would like to give the senior class kind of ownership over that, or have some sort of system where there's I don't know, that there's more student input on how to go about doing that. That's my personal view on it, but it would be something that We haven't really talked about that part of it yet. And the proposal is that this would not be started immediately, for example, with the current senior class. This would be started with the current freshman class. So you phase it in order to give students the opportunity to accrue the necessary credits over their entire high school career. So it's not something that we would start right away.
What would a student do who transfers in as a senior from another school district?
So we would probably look at the transcripts and then determine what, just for like any student that transfers in, we would look to see what credits that we're going to honor and give credit for. Certainly if there's advanced level credits, advanced placement credits, or college level credits, those would factor in. We would have to make a determination as to what we're granting credit for and then apply the system based on that criteria. So really what the proposal identifies is college level coursework and or AP. So that's really what would be factored in.
Brian, have students been included in any of the conversation?
There's been, so the enrichment SIP group included some feedback from students and parents as well. Yeah.
And they've been positive about it?
Yeah, the feedback that we've had has been encouraging, and the part that Mr. Bogart mentioned originally about the extracurricular participation is some of the feedback that we got once we rolled it through multiple groups, that they thought that in participating in an activity at least once per year throughout the high school career would be something that would be important to include in this. So that's why that was factored in as well.
Good.
I think it encourages kids to take the AP courses rather than just not taking them because they don't want to ruin their average or that they want to get a better average and they know they can score high if they don't take the APs. And colleges are really looking at the students. They want them taking those AP courses and not just sliding along. So I think this helps encourage them to do that.
Yeah, we're noticing that more. Colleges are taking a closer look at transcripts and not just looking at GPA and SATs anymore. They really want to see those challenging courses on the transcript. So this would be another way for us to encourage students to do that.
Yeah, they're looking for well-rounded students who've done some public service and broadened their horizons. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
What's our role in this?
So basically, we bring a draft policy change to the board for their consideration and discussion. Just wanted to make sure that prior to doing that the board understood and could have any questions answered on, like you asked some questions that a principal would ask, like, well, who speaks at graduation and all those things. And those things will get worked out, but the policy has to be changed in order to implement this. So we'll come to you with a draft policy for your review.
Thank you.
Obviously, if we had all sat here and said, oh, this is the worst thing we ever heard, maybe no, not to bother that we don't want to do that. So that's good. All right. And now, Kelly.
I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. This month I started Leverage Leadership. I started with the elementary staff. I've been in seeing what's going on in their classrooms, being able to identify their personalized learning that they're putting into their lessons, as well as giving them feedback on how we can improve with differentiation with their lessons. In our CSE meetings, I'm focusing a lot on parent voice and student voice. So as our older kids are coming to their CSE meetings, they're very part of it, answering questions. We have them talking about their accommodations and how well they're working for them or not. And then on Friday, during our professional development, myself and 3 other staff members who are trained in the therapeutic crisis interventions will be doing a refresher with about 40 staff members. And I also have Svetlana coming from BOCES to work with our ENL teachers to work on very focused, targeted how they instruct their students, and if they start to have concerns about an ENL student having a student with disabilities. So that's kind of where we're at. Any questions on my report?
It has to do with numbers. We have 25 students in English language learners. Will they be leaving in the end of the picking season?
At this point, nobody has told us that they're leaving. We might have about 2 or 3 that we think might be part of the migrant population, but as of right now, most of them are here for the long haul, hopefully.
Good, I'm glad we have a person who's dealing with them.
Yeah.
Good, excellent. How about the compliance assurance plan?
Yeah. So
At some point, you don't have to describe it today because I'm
Yeah.
sure it's complex, but that has to do with the CSE students
correct,
as related to suspension rates and disciplinary records.
correct.
Okay.
So the state had done a review of our records, looking at students with disabilities in terms of their suspension rates. And we were looked at for over suspending students who are white. So now we have to go back through and show that we've shown proof that we've talked about their behaviors at CSE meetings. So part of that plan is going in, and I have to do a few program reviews coming up before October 15th to show that we talk about their behavior and determine whether or not they need a behavior intervention plan. And then there's lots of things that come to follow that I'll report on throughout the year that we have to keep showing that we're doing this year.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And Robert Grant? Almost didn't get that out right, did I?
Good evening. A few items I'd like to highlight in my report. Fall sports are coming quickly to a close. We have some senior events still to occur, boys soccer tomorrow night, and next week boys volleyball on Wednesday, and girls soccer and girls volleyball on Thursday night. Sectionals will be coming right around the corner. We have girls individual tennis sectionals on Friday, and then other sectional information will be updated on our website as soon as we get those dates. Something that was extremely wonderful this year is our homecoming week. We had elementary school, middle school, and high school all had homecoming spirit days all throughout the week, and then our culmination on Friday the 27th. We had homecoming activities throughout the entire day, all the way up through the evening until 10 p.m. at night. It was a full community of support with all hands on deck, from lunch on the lawn for the entire school up here at the high school, 7 through 12, to a nice pep rally with a spirit band. Then we had an after-school bash. Then we had 6 different athletic contests, and that culminated into the bonfire in the evening. So it was absolutely wonderful, with probably one of the largest attendances I've seen here. And then we had a perfect attendance incentive for anyone who had perfect attendance for the month of September. If they attended the game or any of the events, they could come over and get a free cotton candy or a snow cone, which was our first district-wide attendance incentive. So that is my report. And any questions?
I was really pleased to see that crossover between school attendance and a reward at with the candy or whatever it was, the cotton candy and the cone. That was a great idea. Anyone else?
I enjoyed your report, especially the part where you thanked everyone, not just you had everyone in there and you listed them, and that was very, very well done. The pictures were great, and I think also I forgot what group did it, but they helped the North Rose Lions Club get their auction stuff out for 4 hours or something. I thought that was a really good community service.
Yeah, the boys soccer team, that was great. And as more teams start to send in their pictures, I'll include those in my future board reports as well. And then Miss Duffy as well, she was there all day. There was over 60 pictures that she took and posted on our websites and did all the advertisements, and she does such a fantastic job putting all that together, so thank you so much.
I think your report would do well to be a brochure going into the whole community to show that students, young people, they do good things. And a lot of times we're down on kids, or not we, but people are down on kids, and this shows what they really positively can do. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Just one thing, the homecoming evening, the event, it was so nice to see so many faculty, staff members and their families along with them. There were so many family members there that we'd never have the luxury of meeting, and they were just there, and it was a nice community event. Thank you.
Thank you for the board members that attended. I saw so many there, so thank you. Thank you.
As you know, our after-school program started yesterday. At the elementary school, we have 89 students who are currently enrolled. We have 9 teachers, 1 TA, 8 aides, and 4 student workers who will be beginning as soon as their soccer season is over. Don't want that to end too soon, though. This year, we have been recruiting to get staff members from the high school to come down and join us so we can have as many students as possible participate in the program. And we do have 4 teachers from the high school who have joined us, which we're really excited about because I think that's a great opportunity to have staff from both buildings working together, and our staff get to know the students at a younger age, so it's that we know them when they do move up to the middle and high school. Some of the workshops that we're going to be offering are things like story hour with a librarian and young science olympiads with Nick Wojak, so that he can kind of build his program again with the elementary, so when it moves up to the high school, we have an even stronger program than we already do. At the high school, we have 60 students who are currently enrolled, with 11 teachers and 4 aides working, but that's always going to be in flux just depending on what teachers are able to work and what courses the students are ready to take. One of the things that we're really excited about when Mr. Lapp is able to start working when he's done coaching volleyball, he's going to be doing a career-based course for students. So that's going to be working on interviewing skills and soft skills, like when somebody calls you to offer you an interview, how do you have that phone conversation? And then he's going to be working with industries in the area to set up different tours to go out into the area to businesses and industries so that our students have an opportunity to see what we have in the area and some places they might be interested in working. The other thing that we're doing is setting up college tours on Saturdays so that we have students who are going to be able to go out, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders can go on Saturdays to visit different colleges in the area. So our first one is set up for the 26th of this month, and they're going to be going to St. John Fisher. So they'll spend about an hour and a half touring the school. They get to go in to see the classrooms. What it looks like is they interview students there, and it's a course for them. So they go, and throughout the process when they interview the students, when they pick a student, during the entire time, they meet. So it's a class for them. And then when they come out, they bring Sean William himself comes out, their students. And then we pick students who we would consider kind of be those like bubble students. So they're students that we're worried about, maybe they have poor attendance, we're worried that they don't have connections in the school, or they don't have connections in the community. You know, they're not the ones that play sports. And then once a week they would come out, and we make a decision of whether we want them to spend, half of their time on academics or half of their time on social skills, or do we want to spend more time on social skills? They never spend more than half the time on academics, because it's really about making those connections, developing social skills. So the goal is to get this started in January, if it's something that we decide that we want to go ahead with. Right now, they've already made all of their contracts with their school districts. Another option would be, because they do work with Red Creek right now, so one thing that we can talk about is if we want to transport students to Red Creek. But one of the things that they do like to do is work with them on organizational skills, so kind of going to their locker and helping them fix that up, make sure that their folders and binders are organized. So that would be a trade-off if we did decide to do that.
Great.
I have a question about when you're doing college visits. Do students gather and they're transported in a group?
Yes.
To St. John Fisher?
Yep, so right now we have 6 students who are going, and we have a teacher who's going to go with them, and we have bus transportation that's provided by the school.
That's great, because some students that wouldn't be able to go there otherwise
And that's exactly what we're doing.
That's good.
And we're going to pair with Alliance, going to join us on this trip, so that when they plan other events on other Saturdays, then hopefully we'll be able to go along with them as well.
Is the food program going to be part of the Cougar Cupboard, or is it going to be a separate entity?
So from my board report?
Yeah.
So that is going to go through the Cougar Cupboard.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that also going to be connected to other things that are already in place in the community, or not?
So That in itself, that is its own entity. And then we're going to be building on other things that are going to be connected to the community. But the idea is to be able to have multiple different resources that are available for the community, but be able to communicate those in a more streamlined way than what we're doing right now. Okay. But when we talk about through the FLIPS grant, being able to hand over to a school district, how do you open up a school, what food pantry within your school, that will be the focus of the FLIPS grant. But when we talk about food pantries within a community, we would like to be able to have a much more well-communicated way to communicate to the district and to a community what's available within your district.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
All right, thank you. And Kennedy is here.
Is that a volleyball game?
Kennedy has a volleyball game. That's good for her. Pardon me. Now comes a great time of the agenda, which is good news, and that's our students who scored 3 and 4 on our next test. Megan?
All right, so since this month we're focusing on the middle school, tonight we are acknowledging students who scored a 3 or a 4 on their ELA or math state tests, and also the teachers that those students identified as helping them along the way. And I shouldn't say teachers, it's actually staff members, because it's not just teachers that students identified. So here you'll see that we had 91 students, grade 5 through 8, score 3 or 4 on the state ELA exam, and 125 students, grade 5 through 8, score a 3 or a 4 on the state math exam. And you'll notice these are all the teachers who were listed by students, all the staff members who were listed as having an impact on them in helping them get to their success on the state tests and within school. And the numbers next to people's names, that's how many students actually identified them. So some people were identified many more times than just once. So you can really see the impact that a lot of our teachers are having on students. Mr. Matthews is coordinating a ice cream social for the students and the teachers who are recognized within the building, but we just wanted to really recognize as a board the teachers and the students who are doing all this hard work.
That's just fantastic. Congratulations to these teachers who kids recognize as being their mentors and their helpers and important to their learning. That's a large number right there. That's fantastic. It does take a community, doesn't it? Wonderful. Thank you so much. Nice to recognize all of them. Before we move on to the superintendent, assistant superintendent reports, we're going to take a 5-minute break. At that time, if there's anyone who wants to leave, please feel free to do that. Thank you. 5 minutes. And we will continue our agenda with the Assistant Superintendent for Instruction and School Improvement, Megan Glardy.
All right. So I apologize for not doing this during good news, but I wanted to bring attention to the fact that this month there's a week that's Board of Education Recognition Week. And so we do have some artwork that our young artists have made for you to thank you for all you do to support them. The really interesting thing is that all the students were shown the same picture of an apple tree, and we're asked to draw their interpretation of it. So you can see from pre-K all the way up through 12th grade, the different forms that took. So thank you for all you do, and then there's the certificates there for you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all these wonderful things that we received here from the North Rose Art Club, North Rose-Wolcott Art Club, and High School Student Council, and from students, and from Superintendent Bigliotti. Thank you. It's, none of us are in this for the pay that we get, but we certainly are here for the love of our kids and our district, and we want to do all we can to make this a great place for kids to learn and grow up. So get ready for their futures. So after the meeting, we'll go over and take a real close look at those pictures. Thank you, Megan. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions for Megan on her report? We kind of talked with you a couple times now, so.
One thing I did want to mention just regarding the parent liaison, a question about that. So as part of the strategic action plan, we really have been striving to be able to communicate with families better. And from that came the parent liaison position. And that position was filled last year at the elementary school and this year. And then this year, for the first time, we have someone from the middle school, a parent who is going to fill a position as well. So some of the things that the parent liaison has done is they will call parents to invite them to different events if their child is getting an award. They hold parent meetings to bring up different issues that parents have to talk to administrators about. If we need to get a feel for how parents are feeling about certain things, they'll reach out and get information from parents and bring it back. And then they also sit on committees and represent the parents of the district and their voice within the committees. So we found that it's been a very valuable resource to have within the buildings.
Thank you. We'll be voting on that in our consent agenda under A3 when we get there. Thank you for explaining that. And now, Mr. Megan, Assistant Superintendent for Business and Operations.
I believe I included everything in my report for this month. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have at all on any of it.
Anyone have questions for Bob? Okay, thank you, Bob. And lastly, Mr. Bigliotti is superintendent.
If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those as well. We are still working to get the leach field graded at the elementary school appropriately so that water doesn't build up on top of it. The good news is the system is working, but there needs to be additional fill, so they're working on that. And next week they're scheduled to come and do some work in relation to our water softeners. Once they do that, the only thing left will be staff training and handover of the operations guide. So we're nearing an end, but we're not there yet. And with the heavy rain that we had this past week, we did notice some pooling on the top of it, which we're addressing at this point. Other than that, I'd answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. In the agenda, you will see at D a group of policies that are listed. These are presented to you tonight as a first read. We don't discuss them tonight. You can read them on your own. And we will be doing discussion. The policies will be discussed at our second board meeting of October, which it will be on the 22nd. So we'll go right through them at that point. Okay? Then following that, the second read would be at our first November meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to adopt them that night. And that meeting is on the 12th. Okay. And now a motion to approve the consent agenda. I'm going this way. Linda and Jason, discussion. I'm going to ask that number A7, no, yes, or is it 7? Yes, A7, be pulled to be voted on separately following the consent agenda vote, because both Tina is listed there, and Jason, I think you're, it's on page 4?
The volunteers.
Tina and Jason, I think, did I see Jennifer Sloan is listed, so that you two would be abstaining. But I want to give you the opportunity to vote on the consent agenda. So we'll pull this out and we'll vote on this separately, at which point you two can abstain. Okay? So, consent agenda minus number 7 at this point. Any other questions or discussion for the consent agenda? All right, then all of those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Motion is carried. Now, a motion please to put number 7, the appointment of volunteers. Approval of that, please. John and Isaac. Now, discussion. All right, then, Jason and, do we need to do roll call if we're going to, yeah. Okay, we'll do a roll call then on this one. John?
Yes.
Tina? Izetta?
Yes.
Cinda?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Jason? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I would like a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of the discussion of a specific legal issue and a specific student issue. Tina and Jason, a discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We will be doing some business following executive session if you want to stay for that open session. Motion please to add to the agenda. Is that right? Let's see. To approve the additions to the agenda. Jason and Tina, discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. And now, a motion to put appoint a long-term substitute teacher. A motion to approve. Tina and Linda, discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. A motion to appoint an impartial hearing officer. Jason, John, discussion? A roll call vote, please.
John?
Yes.
Cinda?
Yes.
Linda? Yes. Tina?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Paul is absent. Izetta?
Yes.
Thank you, motion is carried.
Motion is carried.
I just wanted to share a couple of housekeeping items that were in my dashboard that I should have emphasized prior. Our next meeting will be 2 weeks from today, and it will be in the small cafeteria, and we'll begin at 5 p.m. As your attorney will be coming and giving you some information. And then the regular meeting will begin at 6 p.m. So 5 o'clock, start the meeting, executive session, and then 6 p.m. the regular meeting will begin.
All right. Thank you. All right, a motion please to adjourn. Linda and Isaiah. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you and good evening.